Hey everyone, back again for another shop video. Now today we are going to continue working on Jared's SRT, which you see behind me here. And what we're going to work on today are all of the stainless hot parts for it. So what we have are 3 1 3/4 UJ bends, 2 44mm wastegate outlet flanges, a 3 to 4 inch concentric cone, and a 4 inch 90-degree bend. So the only thing that I'm missing right now is the turbine outlet flange, which should be here at any time now. And what we're going to do is build some hood exit exhaust components. Obviously the hood is not on the car, so I'll overbuild these, meaning that I'll make them longer than they need to be. So when Jared gets his hood, he can cut the hood for the exhaust parts and trace around and trim them, and then everything will be good as far as his exhaust parts go. So looking at the space that we are dealt here, and he positioned the wastegates in the orientation that he wanted them in, so it'll make it easier for him to route his lines for them. We have this pocket here that the downpipe can, or I guess the up pipe or hood exit can wrap up around this way. And then we have this pocket over here that the wastegate dump tubes can snake up around and hopefully can make everything kind of sit on the same plane and in the same orientation. So once that flange gets here, I can get to probably start on the actual exhaust pipe itself, start cutting, start fitting, and we can get rocking on these stainless parts. All right, after spending most of the day waiting around for this to come in, I have my 3 5/8 PTE turbine outlet flange. So I went ahead and I put my mock clamp on there with a straight threaded non-lock nut, as the lock nuts can very easily mar and tear up the threads on those clamps, and then you're left with a likely broken bolt on the clamp, which not a good deal. So I'll go ahead and I'll throw this flange on the turbine outlet. Then I can take my concentric cone and start figuring out what angle it needs to sit at, make the cut on it, and then I can weld the flange to the cone and start building from there. And there we have the concentric cone welded to the turbine outlet flange. So it came out pretty nice. All back purged, as you guys saw, sitting on the purge block there. And we have clearance to our wastegate outlet, so all is well there. So the next order of business will be to figure out what angles that we need to get the exhaust to come up and be in a position where it will come through the hood. So I have this little bend that was sitting in my spare materials box over there, and then over on my chair there I have the 90-degree bend that I ordered specifically for this project. So I'm going to cut one of the legs off of the 90, and that will give me a rough idea of if it needs to kick or move around at all. Once I have that, I can start mocking up the rest of it. So go make the cut and we'll get back to fitting this up. There we have the hood exit. So it still needs the O2 bung put in it, but I'm going to wait to do that until I see where the dump tubes lie, as I don't want to put the wideband in and then have it be in the way of the 2 wastegate dump tubes. So pretty happy with it, and I took it a more vertical route as opposed to a slash cut or miter cut, as this will make it easier when Jared gets his hood and he goes to cut the hole for it, not having to contend with a big oblong shaped miter cut as opposed to just a straight circle. So that's the reason for that. And let me get my flashlight out. If we look down in the tube, you can see a nice full penetration weld the whole way around. And both the weld seams came out like that, and very, very happy. So it's about the end of the day here now. I'm going to get out of here for today, and I'll be back in tomorrow. We'll knock the dump tubes out, and we will keep trucking from there. We are back today to work on the dump tubes on Jared's SRT. So have a little bit of heater noise, had a nice burst of winter air in Ohio here to finish out the winter season going into spring, but that's no matter. It's warm in the shop, so we're going to get some work done. So you remember yesterday we got the hood exit exhaust wrapped up, and that leaves the two dump tubes to do now. So Jared was able to find a carbon hood for this car, so he is bringing that out today, and we'll be able to get the hood on, cut the hole for the exhaust and the dump tubes once I get all that stuff on, and make all of that work harmoniously. It'll look really nice. But need to get the dump tubes done first, so that way I know exactly the size of the hole that needs to be cut, and there is no guesswork with it. So we will go ahead and get right into it. I have all of my materials here on the ground, and need to get the flanges put on and figure out which one of these tubes to start with. And I guess figure out where they're going to be routed to as well. So let's get to it. So I have my two flanges down in there, and what I'm going to do is try to bring the dump tubes up on the front side of the exhaust here and have them obviously match the height, and then attempt to match or get as close as I can to matching the contour of the hood exit exhaust here. So I'm going to start with the farthest down wastegate in there, or the wastegate that controls the far side from where we're standing currently, that side of the manifold. So this farther down wastegate will end up coming closer to us here, and the closer wastegate will be on the farther side. And I know that might be a little bit complicated and a little bit of kind of a tongue or brain twister, but you'll see what we're doing here shortly, and it all makes sense then. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting up one of these UJs and get a 45-degree bend off of it, start fitting that in there, and we'll see where we land from there. Now, the way that projects like this normally go is you have one idea, and by the time you actually get to looking at the way that the tubes and materials are going to lie, that idea gets scrapped, and you have to reconvene and figure out a new way to do it. So this was no different, and I'll show you why. So looking down in here, if I take one of my 45s, and I obviously made a couple more cuts here, but if I take and hold a 45 down in here, then the clearance for this wastegate right here that the camera is centralized around, I don't have that much clearance to allow for the bend that needs to be there to get it to snake up the way that I want it to. So we are not going to start with that more recessed wastegate. We're going to start with the top one. I'll get that one built, and that will allow me to build around that, as opposed to building the top wastegate dump tube around the lower one. That would be more restrictive and confining and not the ideal way to do it. So I have this 90 right here that fits in nicely right there. So I'll prep this tube, pull the flange off, I can weld that together and start building from there. So now that we have a correct plan for how this is going to go, let's go ahead and get after it. After that last bit of off-camera fit up, there is the first dump tube all fabbed. So pretty happy with how it matches the contour of the tube, and especially happy with the top side of it, with our nice even gap going down through, and nice level cuts between the two tubes. So now that that's all done, I'm going to go ahead and pull this tube off. I'll weld this one up so any movement or any other deformation that may occur during the welding process will be done and over with. Once that is all done, I can move on to the second dump tube and try to make it match up as well as that first one did to the exhaust. So let's get after it. All right, after that little bit of welding right there, we have the dump tube on Jared's car, so let's take a look at it. And all welded up, came out exactly as I wanted it to. Sits nice and in line with that exhaust tube. Goes down, all welded up, all back purged and everything else. So now the next order of business, as we said before, if you look down in there, we have the second wastegate. That's just snake all the way around everything else there, up through, and I think the tube will end up somewhere in this area over here. So hopefully I have enough material for it. I think we should be good, but let's get after it. All right, I went ahead and I re-angled that lower wastegate just a hair to get me a little bit more clearance for the fittings right there and to get a little bit better angle for the second bend of this dump tube. So let's see if I can do this without knocking the tube out of place. But we have one 90-degree bend there. I have a second 90-degree bend in my hand right here. And come on, hand, fit. It will angle up something like that. And then there'll be another bend on the top of this 90 that snakes it around and gets me right to the position that I want to be next to this dump tube here. So I'll go ahead, I'll pull that off, prep that first 90, get it welded to the flange, and then we can go ahead and start marking out the rest of the bends, cutting, fitting, you know how it goes, and get this other dump tube knocked out. And after that little time lapse, there we go with the second dump tube. So looks kind of cool. If you guys can see down in there, it snakes around the other one, comes up, and I tried to keep everything equidistant aside from the tube to tube, but the tubes to the exhaust, everything ended up pretty well there. And they're essentially the same height, even though the height doesn't particularly matter right now, as they'll be getting cut to the contour of the hood. So all that's cool. But that is a wrap for the stainless hot parts. So that'll be about it for this video as well. So we'll continue on with the next video with knocking out some of the other parts of this project. But until then, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and we'll see you next time.